Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Tanaz Golshan. I'm the SVP of Caring for Jews in Need at Jewish Federation Los Angeles. As a woman born in Iran and a member of the Iranian Jewish community, our hope is that by the end of this webinar, everyone has a deeper understanding of this historic moment we find ourselves in. This program is part of Jewish Federation Los Angeles's ongoing commitment to educating and engaging our community on critical global issues that impact Jewish life, regional stability, and human dignity. Today's conversation is intended to provide historical grounding, cultural context, and timely insight into what is happening in Iran and why it matters, particularly to the Persian Jewish, and allied communities here in Los Angeles and beyond. We are so grateful to our distinguished speakers for joining us, as well as our colleagues at Jewish Federations of North America for their partnership. The goal of today's webinar is education, to better understand what this region has endured, what it is experiencing now, and how we as a community in Los Angeles and across North America can respond thoughtfully and impactfully. We invite you to submit questions throughout the program using the webinar's Q&A function. Time permitting, these will be directed to our speakers during the Q&A portion of the program. It is now my pleasure to introduce today's facilitator, Dina Levy, former national security and intelligence analyst, who will guide us through this important conversation. Dina, thank you.
Thank you, Tanos, and thank you all for your interest in this afternoon's program. We appreciate that you care about the Iranian community and are taking the time to listen and to be informed. We're watching the news closely as events continue to unfold, with recent developments weighing heavily on us all. At present, Los Angeles is home to the largest number of Iranians outside of Iran and to around 50,000 Iranian Jews. Each Iranian family, no matter their religion, has its own unique story of escape, of loss, of hardship, and of resilience, and it's important that we tell and hear those stories. We have a distinguished group of speakers with us today who will teach us more about Iranian history, shed light on recent events in Iran and how they developed, and suggest ways in which we can support members of the Iranian diaspora during this fraught time. We'll conclude with a prayer for peace. Before I introduce our first speaker, I'd like to share a bit about my own story. I'm a first-generation Iranian Jewish American born and raised in Los Angeles. I've never been to Iran. My parents came to America for school in the 1950s and 60s, were married here in 1971, and never went back. They invited all the Iranian Jews who lived in LA at the time to their wedding, all 70 of them. I have vivid memories of Iranian Jews, my family members among them, arriving in trickles and then in waves when I was a child. I remember hearing my father in the middle of the night, straining to communicate over unreliable phone lines, trying to help desperate mothers in Iran find their teenage sons who had disappeared, possibly sent to prison or to the front lines of the war with Iraq. I also remember having to hide my identity here in LA during the hostage crisis. My parents told me to say that our last name, Qudsian, was Armenian, not Iranian. My Ashkenazi Jewish day school rituals were foreign to me. At the school's mock Passover seder, I ate gefilte fish. At our family seder, I ate rice with saffron. My classmates spent Erev Rosh Hashanah at temple. My family spent that evening feasting with my grandparents, my 20 uncles and aunts, and more than 30 first cousins. I'm now married to a Persian Jewish man. A few months before the revolution, my husband was sent alone to Los Angeles at age 14 on less than 24 hours' notice after his Jewish day school in Tehran had been firebombed. That was the last time he saw Iran. Fast forward a generation, we have 3 grown daughters who also attended Jewish day school. They loved their school's culture and traditions, and they also love their Persian culture and traditions. They're following and feeling what is happening in Iran as viscerally as their father is, and hope that one day they will get to see their ancestors' birthplace. Our family is deeply grateful that the Federation and all of you see us and care so deeply about us and about our community. Now, to give us some of the historical and regional context for this moment, we have the good fortune to hear from Lisa Daftari on the key moments in Iranian history that shaped today's reality in the Islamic Republic, and why historical context is essential to understanding this month's developments. Lisa is a renowned journalist and an expert on the Middle East and counterterrorism. She also is the editor-in-chief of the Foreign Desk. Lisa?
Thank you so much. Before I begin talking about the more recent history that brought us to this moment and why this revolution is so different than any other movement we've seen come out of Iran, I was so moved, Dina, by your words. And I want to talk just a few moments about this faux nostalgia that so many of us carry. I've never been to Iran, yet this is what I've chosen to do because I had this faux nostalgia. I remember watching footage of the Shah of Iran leaving Iran, and I would tear up. I remember I was a little girl sitting on a shaggy rug in my living room in New Jersey when we found out that Khomeini died. And I very quickly turned to my mother and said, "Does this mean we're moving to Iran?" I'd always felt like we were here because that regime was there. And for me, this was very much a part of my psyche growing up, our dinner table conversations until, I chose this line of work, perhaps because I was in that mode of always explaining things to friends, to teachers, to whomever would listen to our story. And so, Dina, it was beautiful for you to share that and that connection that many of us have and maybe don't have a chance to articulate. I was asked to speak a bit about the history that brought us to this moment, and I thought to answer the question that I've been asked so often over the last 2.5 weeks, which is, why is this movement different, or will this be the movement that takes the Iranian people to their actual revolution for regime change? And the reason why this movement is so different, it's important to understand both the revolution or evolution of the Iranian people that got them to this moment and the evolution of the region and the mullahs and the actual theocracy in Iran. The Iranian people first introduced themselves, although they had protests over the last, I would say, 2 decades or so, first came onto the scene in 2009 when everyone started paying attention to them because of social media. And it was the Green Revolution, also known as the Twitter Revolution. It was the first grassroots movement where the Iranian people very masterfully used social media to tell the world their stories. Of course, we don't have journalists or honest journalists that are covering that or have a residency there able to tell us that. So they thought, we're going to use our phones and we're going to tell the world how brutal our government is. And the world, in some ways, fell in love with the Iranian people because they were shocked to know Iranians aren't riding on camels and they're not terrorists, but they're cool and they have great hair and they're handsome and pretty and they want the same basic freedoms that we have here in the West. Their cries for freedom are very, very basic and very human. This is all that they want. So unfortunately, that movement didn't lead to much. President Obama had the agenda of moving forward with the JCPOA, a nuclear deal. He thought of diplomacy versus regime change for the Iranian people, and that movement was squandered. Then you fast forward for a decade and a half, you have various movements, whether it was the egg protests or the Bazari protests or the teachers' protests, different sectors of the Iranian population that showed their disenchantment by coming out onto the streets. But of course, at the end of it, would always say death to the dictator, or, we don't want this regime, and would come up with slogans that showed us that this is a much bigger fire that is brewing under the population in Iran. Then we got to the Masa Amini protest 3 years ago when the death of a 22-year-old Kurdish Iranian girl who was beaten to death because she was wearing her hijab in a more modern way and showing some of her hair brought a lot of people out onto the streets. This is the first time we saw more expansive protests. And of course, it was led by young women, but supporting them were men and the elderly, and it became generational. Everyone came out onto the streets. People around the world cut their hair in solidarity with the Iranian people, and still, it didn't take them to where they wanted to take them, but it prepared them for this moment today. Now, of course, you've been watching the reports that talk about 2.5 weeks ago, where the Iranian people started to come out onto the streets, and everyone credited this new movement with the economy, the spiraling economy, and of course, people who dream of democracy and freedom can't come out onto the streets if they are well fed and have great jobs. They just don't. That economy and that poverty and those lack of opportunities are what bring people out onto the streets. But the bottom line is they want regime change, and they've made that very, very clear. So one of the reasons why this time is different is because they are very much united in this fight. Another reason is that we've always thought that there is no, or not us, but I would say the West has been very much fearful of the term regime change. Both Democrat and Republican administrations have always shied away from regime change because, to be frank, anytime the United States has tried it, it's been something that has led to something worse, a political vacuum, insurgencies taking over. And for years, we tried to write op-eds and inform the public that this regime change in Iran, it would be very, very different because this government that is currently sitting in Tehran is the insurgency. This is the worst case scenario. So for Iran, regime change would look very different. But they're still very weary because who would take that position? And now the Iranian people have rallied very much in unison around the exiled Prince Reza Pahlavi. And they have made that message clear with slogans on the street, showing his picture both in expat and in protests on the streets in Iran. They've made it very clear that he is their intended transitional leader to take them into the future. Another reason why this is very important right now is because of the place the regime finds itself in geopolitically in the region. It is the weakest we've ever seen them. Obviously, the fall of the Bashar al-Assad regime in Syria, the taking of Maduro in Venezuela, which is basically a satellite state for the regime in our hemisphere at the footbed of the United States, where they had Hezbollah operatives there for many, many years, building their presence there. And of course, their proxies that have been badly diminished by Israel over the last 2 years, Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis, all make a big difference in the weakening the regime. And of course, the 12-day war in which Israel and the United States set them back in their nuclear capabilities. And lastly, we have President Trump in office. And whether you love him or hate him, his approach with the Iranian people has been very, very different. For years, for decades, we've seen Republican and Democrat administrations deal with Iran in a ping-pong way, which neither one was effective to deal with Iran. It was either bomb Iran or let them get the bomb, which really, because of neither option being good, they always did nothing. And we stayed in the middle in this kind of purgatory with Iran's regime. So when we have a president who has dealt directly with the Iranian people, in his first term, he had the maximum pressure campaign, which put pressure on Iran's regime. We saw that it was very effective in diminishing, again, a lot of their, or targeting very much their sectors or sanctions that were very much targeting sectors that pertain to the government. And in this administration, we're only a year in, but the intended goal was not only maximum pressure on the regime, but maximum support for the people of Iran. And that is manifested in, again, dealing directly with the Iranian people, articulating to them that he will support them and support their cause, encouraging them to come out onto the streets, as we've seen. And as military assets move toward the region, I mean, it's yet to be determined what will happen, but this is something that has been unprecedented. But what I want to emphasize is really, again, the evolution of this movement, how we got to this moment, and how both the devolution of the regime and the evolution of the Iranian people are meeting at this perfect storm and this perfect moment right now. There has never been such an opportune moment to bring the regime down, to bring regime change for the people of Iran, meaningful change. And they know what the day after will look like. They already have planned for it. They're telling the world what they want, and I don't think that they will ever go back to what it was. So there's only one way forward, and that is to victory. And the Iranian people have really made that clear. And I think it's very important for us to support them. I address a lot of libertarian groups and people who are questioning whether foreign intervention will be welcomed by the people of Iran. They've made it clear whether it comes from Israel or the United States or the moon, they would be very much welcoming of any entity that can help them get the significant and meaningful change that they want. And I think for those who are more isolationists and don't want to get involved with someone else's war or put boots on the ground, I don't think that this is a boots on the ground type of operation, number one. And number two, this is our war as well. I want to remind people that Iran is the number one state sponsor of terror. They have American blood on their hands. Of course, they have Israeli blood on their hands. From day one, it was the big say in the United States and the little say in Israel. And they have not backed down from that position, burning American flags, burning Israeli flags, teaching children, instead of the way that our children say the Pledge of Allegiance every morning, they have to say death to Israel and death to America every morning. This is our war too. The world would be a better place without the Islamic Republic in Tehran.
Thank you, Lisa. We now turn to the present moment with multiple voices offering insight into Iranian society and the ongoing repression and resilience of the Iranian people. First, we're privileged to turn it over to Sam Kermanian, a director at the Institute for Voices of Liberty, a nonprofit educational public policy institute dedicated to reflecting the aspirations of the people of Iran in their quest for freedom, pluralism, human rights, and democracy. He also is a former Secretary General and current senior advisor to the Iranian American Jewish Federation. After Sam, we will hear from Arzu Rashidian, a longtime Iranian political activist and a trustee of the Institute for Voices of Liberty, who will offer her insight into the current situation. Arzu has consistently stood as an ally to the Iranian Jewish community, and we're very grateful that she has joined us in this important conversation. Sam?
Thank you. Thank you, Tanaz. Thank you, Dina, and thank you, Jewish Federation LA, for doing this and for giving me the opportunity to brief this audience about the current situation in Iran. My very dear friend and esteemed colleague, Lisa, provided a full picture of what has been occurring in the last several days. On Tuesday, Nazanin Ansari, another prominent Iranian journalist, wrote in a column in the National Review that, quoting, "What the world is witnessing today is not a sudden eruption. It is the culmination of the protests of 2017 and 2019 and the 2022 Woman Life Freedom Uprising that was sparked by the death of Mahsa Amini in police custody for wearing her hijab improperly." Indeed, this time around is not just a culmination, but a fed-up nation's reaction to the compilation of a whole universe of ills, of a corrupt, brutal, and tyrannical regime that has plundered the incredible wealth that the Iranian nation had, mishandled every aspect of governmental duty, taken away all manners of freedom, broken all foreign alliances, and turned old friends into bitter foes. In 2009, a segment of the population came out en masse to protest the very clear cheating by the government and the stealing of an election. In 2019, others came out against the sudden rise in gas prices in a country that's gone in oil. In 2022, yet another segment came out to protest the killing of an innocent young girl, who in essence symbolized the sorry state of women under the Islamic Republic. The theocratic regime was incapable, unwilling, or uninterested in dealing with these issues. It was too busy pursuing nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles, financing terror groups around the globe, dealing in illicit drug trafficking, and looting the prison. Instead, each time they resorted to violent, repressive measures to quash any kind of dissent and continued pillaging and mismanaging. Meanwhile, rivers, lakes, and dams dried up, to the extent that today many cities lack running water because of disastrous water crises. Supply of electricity to homes, businesses, and even industry is sporadic, unpredictable, and limited. Industry is incapable of manufacturing because machines suddenly stop working in mid-production. Inflation is at over 52% and rising, and inflation of food items is at over 72%. The real, Iran's national currency, is losing value every day, to the extent that merchants selling goods find themselves in the impossible predicament of having to resupply their inventory at prices higher than what they sold their goods for. Most banks are bankrupt because they're forced to loan to government cronies who often refuse to pay back with no recourse. But when the bank goes under, it is the regular Joe's savings that are wiped out. At the same time, You can't keep cash anyway because your money loses value every day. To put things into perspective, during the Shah's regime, you could buy each US dollar for 70 riyals. Today, you must pay a staggering 1,400,000 riyals to get $1. This is a value decline by a factor of 2 million times. A good chunk of the Iranian nation simply does not have food to eat. Men are forced to sell their kidneys, and women are forced into prostitution to feed their children. So yes, this time it is no longer a single issue or a partial segment of society that is protesting. It is an entire nation that has risen up, and it is hard to see how any amount of killing could sustain the regime that simply does not have any solutions for the country's problems for long. And here we are today, with tanks in the streets and heavy machine guns mounted on armored vehicles. Regime loyalists have killed a minimum of 16,500 people and injured over 330,000, according to the Sunday Times. Unofficial and unconfirmed figures of the dead go as high as 80,000. A total and unabashed massacre. As if it wasn't enough to mow down people in the streets, the security forces raided the hospitals and killed some of the injured there as well, or prevented medical staff from offering life-saving treatments or infusing blood to these patients. There are reports now that they're going door to door, raiding homes, arresting or abducting people, and confiscating their electronic devices. There have been unconfirmed reports of summary executions of those who were found to have stolen dishes in their home. Today, the people of Iran are in a state of terror by their leader, but they are also in a state of despair for the suffocating condition they're under, which they no longer tolerate. They want this regime gone in its entirety, and they are willing to pay a heavy price for it, but they cannot do it alone. So their eyes are pinned on help from the United States and Israel. This regime will not last. The question is how high of a price the people of Iran will have to pay to get rid of it. In Syria, the price was close to 1 million people. Let's hope Iran will be a lot less. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. It's such an honor to be here today. I just want to thank everybody first for inviting me to this community and to having me as a guest. I am one of the organizers for the protests in Los Angeles. So you may see me out on the grounds in LA. We have hosted large protests that have been significant, and it's all thanks to you all around the world, really, and what we've been seeing. As a longtime activist, I just wanted to touch on a few things. I think the significance of this movement that's happening in Iran, it comes down to two things. It's what has changed and why we're seeing large numbers all around the world out and in solidarity with the people of Iran is that the first is regime change. So that's the number one significance. And number two is they are shouting the names, the people of Iran are shouting the names of Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi. I think that that's extremely important to mention. He is a significant figure in this movement. This is something that the Islamic Republic probably never thought that they would hear all across Iran's cities. Iranians, as an Iranian American, I was born in the United States. I've never been to Iran, but I hold the culture, and a word that we use in Farsi is the farhang, is so dear to myself. And I think it's something that we are able to, as Iranian Americans, just Iranians, it's a thread, we say, that connects us all. And that's what I'm seeing out in solidarity with the people of Iran. The people of Iran, I mean, we all know, Lisa and Sam covered it really well. It's repression. The Islamic Republic, it models in fear. It is a regime that installs fear into the people of Iran. And I think that that's what is so significant to know is that with all of the internet cutoffs, the lack of water, the food prices, the distribution of basic necessities, that the Iranian people are still able to stand up against this regime. I think that what we're seeing is, with the hijab shifting back during the women life freedom movements, we've seen different things, college students come out, universities, and now we are seeing them call for, the Pahlavi family. And that's so significant and it's extremely moving. I think that the direction that we're seeing the protests go is obviously we're seeing the fear. We are seeing the large numbers of individuals that are being killed. I mean, as one of the organizers of the protests alone this past Sunday in Los Angeles at City Hall, the back stage where we had many of our organizers have lost people dear to them. I think that we are seeing a shift in the way that the regime's brutality and force is. We are hoping as our message, I think that what I'd like to give here in this forum is what can you do? Many of us are involved with different organizations. I myself am part of almost 3, and I've also been part of one of the legislation, Massa Army. We have done, we're pushing legislation inside of Congress for maximum pressure, direct to cell. We're trying to reach out to as many, people that we can to get Starlinks and to see how we can provide internet coverage today. As Lisa mentioned, the internet, we're seeing a lot of videos come out. And I think that as one of the organizers for these events and a long time activist and on projects that I have worked on throughout 20 plus years is still make those calls to the White House. Look at us, look us all up on X, on the social media platforms. There's so many things that you can be involved with. Write letters to put pressure. We finally saw within the past week, the United Nations come forward. I think these are things that are significant and that do make a change. Attend the protests in Los Angeles. I myself live in Orange County, but as a and I used to live in LA, but as we know is that media presence is in Los Angeles. Please come out in large numbers because that's what's reported. And I think that that's where we can be is as a voice for the voiceless. That's what I've always said. And that's who we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Arzu and Sam. We'll now hear from a young Jewish Iranian activist, Matthew Nuriel, who brings an important contemporary perspective to our program. Matthew is the Community Engagement Director for Jews indigenous to the Middle East and North Africa, Jimena, and uses their voice and social media to passionately advocate for equality within the Iranian and Jewish communities and to combat anti-Semitism. They will also share ways the community can stay informed and be supportive of Iranians on the ground. Matthew?
Thank you, Dina, and thank you so much for having me. This is very meaningful. So what can we do? Firstly, I want to name the first thing that everybody can do that is not an Iranian is to internalize this issue as not just an Iranian issue. If anybody who cares about human rights, LGBT rights, women's rights, if you care about Israel and global anti-Semitism, this is your issue as well. So please internalize it and understand that the regime in Iran is the #1 sponsor of anti-Semitism, not only in the Middle East and in Israel, but across the world. And we've seen that consistently throughout decades now. Internalize this as your issue. I think the most important thing we can all do, which is something that Arzu also mentioned, is to reach out to our elected officials, members of Congress, governors, ask them directly what they're doing about Iran, if they even know exactly what's going on within Iran. With that said, I want to name an easy way to do that. There is a page on Instagram called Action for Iran. That's action_for_Iran. They've made it very easy to do this. They've created one-click emails where all you have to do is put in the state that you're in, and it will auto-populate emails to everybody that it needs to auto-populate them to send emails to your local governors. All you have to do is click send. It's that easy. Again, action_for_Iran. I'd also like to encourage everybody to get involved with, follow, and get on the mailing list for the organization NUFTI, that's National Unity for Democracy in Iran. They focus specifically on foreign policy and report very up-to-date information of what's coming directly out of Iran. I also think it's very important for all of us to understand there are bad actors in this space and to be aware of who they are. The most important ones I think to be aware of would be the lobbying group NIAC, which stands for National Iranian American Council. They act as the diplomatic arm for the regime in DC. Unofficially, of course. And a prime example of this would be the contradiction. For example, they say they stand with the protesters in Iran, and at the same time, they oppose foreign intervention and promote reform rather than regime change. Those two things are a contradiction. Another group to be aware of is MEK, that is the People's Mujahideen group that are from Iran. They're an opposition group that has been exiled from Iran, even though they helped the regime come into power. They are now presenting themselves with a democratic and liberal language, but at the end of the day, they are just another Islamist group. Be very aware. I also want to mention that we are seeing and hearing many people, both within and outside of Iran, Iranians, calling for Prince Reza Pahlavi. I think it's important for all of us to understand who he is, what he stands for. Definitely follow him, all of his communications. It's important to know that he is the only, and not only is he the only, he is the best viable option for a transition to a free and democratic Iran. I know a lot of people have reservations about that because his father was a monarch. If you listen to everything he has said consistently over the past 40 years, it has been nothing other than wanting to come in as a transitional leader to help transition Iran into a free, liberal democracy and then take whatever role the people choose for him, if any. So please, it's important that we are not divided on that issue. The last thing that I'd like to mention that's important for all of us to know is we're seeing a growing awareness among many Iranians, again, within and outside of Iran, but specifically with a lot of Iranians inside Iran, that the Jewish people are allies and that we have a common enemy, and that is Islamism and specifically the regime occupying Iran, the Islamic Republic regime. This has been the source of anti-Semitism across the world, as I mentioned before. I'm bringing this up to say we live in Los Angeles. Most of us know or work with Iranians, whether Jewish or not Jewish. We're going through a lot right now. Some of us have family in Iran. Some of us, all of us have a dream to be able to return to Iran, whether as visitors or to live there, whatever the case. We are dreaming of a free and democratic Iran. So please reach out to your Iranian friends, ask them how they're doing, take interest in their lives. Do they ask them if they have family there? How are their family doing? And let them know that you are there for them. That heart-to-heart connection builds allyship more than anything, and it's paramount. So yeah, that's it from me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Matthew. That was so helpful. We now invite Rabbi Tarlin Rabizadeh, Vice President of Jewish Engagement at American Jewish University, to lead us in a prayer for peace and a moment of silence. This moment invites us to reflect individually and collectively.
Thank you to the Federation and everyone for gathering here today. I'm going to actually just explain a little bit of a story, and then I'm going to lead us in a prayer. So we often say in Judaism that when we don't know what to do in life, we pray, but that the answers that God gives us comes in the Bible, in the Torah. And in the Jewish tradition, what's really interesting is that all over the world, we read the exact same chapter out of the book. And what's wild for me as a Persian Jew is that the section that we're in right now is a story of the Israelites who are enslaved and beaten and murdered by the evil Pharaoh. And that this week, this very week, Moses has to go up to the evil Pharaoh and tell him the famous line, "Let my people go." But I just want to talk briefly about why is Moses chosen? Who is Moses? The story goes that the Pharaoh of Egypt was threatened that there were so many Israelite people and they were growing in numbers, so he enslaves them. But then he quickly realizes that that's not good enough to stop them. They're still growing. So he decides to exert a decree that says, you know what? Every time you have a male that's born in the Israelite community, they have to throw them in the Nile River, and essentially they drown and they die. But of course, you all probably know the story of Moses' mother, Yocheved, who actually builds a little boat, a little basket for Moses, and puts Moses in there. And Moses goes down the Nile River. And who saves him? Pharaoh's daughter, one of the princesses. And the reason I bring all of this up is because it's a really, really interesting story about how they have to actually find someone to breastfeed the child. And they end up finding his mother who breastfeeds the child, his own natural mother. It's a long story. So he grows up in the palace, but his nanny is essentially his birth mother. And so now back to my final question, which is why is Moses chosen? So there's a couple of reasons. One is because Moses, like I just explained, was an insider outsider. He spoke the language of the Egyptians, but because he was raised by his birth mother without knowing it, or maybe he did, he also spoke Hebrew. He knew both languages. Another reason was even though he was tongue-tied, that's what the Bible says, he had some kind of a stutter and he couldn't speak properly. He was the only one who saw a burning bush. People apparently walked by that bush all day, but only he was like, wow, this bush is weird. Why is it burning? He was the only one who saw it, and that's why God chose him to lead the people out of slavery. He saw something others didn't, and that was unique. And finally, when he says to God, I'm tongue-tied, I don't know what to do. I can't go to Pharaoh. God sends him Aaron, and the final reason is when when Moses sees a taskmaster beating the Israelite, like one Israelite man over and over, he ends up fighting the taskmaster and killing him and rising up against, terror and being brave. So this brings me to the message for today. It doesn't matter, as so many of our panelists just said, if you're Jewish or Muslim or Baha'i or Christian or Zoroastrian or Republican or Democrat or an atheist altogether. There are people in the land of Iran, once called Persia, being enslaved, beaten, raped, and murdered. And today we're being called to be like Moses. If you feel that you can't protest on the streets or speak up yourself because you're tongue-tied, it's too emotional, or you don't know what to say or what to do, find yourself an Aaron, a guide. Listen to the ideas we heard today. But above all, make noise and speak up. The first time that God suggests to Moses that he speak to Pharaoh, he tells him to go to Pharaoh super early in the morning when he's bathing and relieving himself in the Nile River. And what does relieving himself mean? It means he would go to the bathroom early in the morning. He would pee, essentially, before the whole country woke up. Why would he do it in secret? Because Pharaoh was pretending to be a god on earth, and gods don't need to go to the bathroom. So he had to keep it a secret. And so that's what we're dealing with today. People in charge of Iran thinking that they're gods on earth, and ultimately in the story of the Exodus in the Bible gives us hope. It's a happy ending. The main God, the God who creates human beings, wins against the fake God with plagues and miracles. So we all will continue to have hope towards that happy ending, that a miracle will come. Maybe it takes one plague, maybe 10 plagues to get rid of the pharaohs in charge of Iran today, the IRGC. But the bottom line is that God didn't do it alone. And as an American Iranian, it's been hard for me to witness death tolls and what's going on in Iran. And I can't help but think that if my own family didn't leave Iran, I'd be on the streets myself today, or worse. So on that note, let's close out by taking a moment of silence. Not only to think about all of the lives lost, the thousands and thousands, more than we know, of brave souls fighting to be freed, a freedom that is not only to benefit them, as we were told earlier today, but to benefit the entire world. But also, I hope this moment of silence will help each of you in your prayers to think, what's the takeaway from the Bible? How can each of us be a Moses today to amplify the voices of these Iranian people who can't communicate with us right now with the blackouts and complete darkness? How can we, each of us, be messengers to spread awareness around the globe about these atrocities? May a miracle come soon, and may the Iranian people be freed from those tyrants and enter their own promised land soon. Bezudi, as we say in Farsi. And let us say, Amen. We have faith that freedom will come soon. Please take a moment.
Thank you, Rabbi. We'll now turn to questions from the audience.
Thank you so much. I cannot turn on my video, but I'm here and I will be asking a couple questions. The first question, and again, thank you for those who post questions in the chat. Our first question is for Lisa. Lisa, do you think the military, or at least a portion of it, will shift towards supporting overthrow of the regime?
Yes, it's a great question. It is actually one of the signals of weakness that we're seeing. And this is what we actually predicted is once we start seeing the defections within various ranks of local and national law enforcement and military, that's where we're going to begin to see more of the breaking point internally. And we're beginning to see that both local police, military, IRGC. Just a reminder that the Islamic Republic imported over 1,000 militia men from Iraq, from Afghanistan. This is a major theme from this regime where they have to import foreigners to do their dirty work because these Iranian law enforcement, local, again, national, won't kill in wholesale fashion in the brutal way that they wanted their own Iranian civilians. And again, the threat to kill your own civilians, if there should be an attack by Israel or by the United States, by Donald Trump, the threat that they will again start to execute their own and start to kill their own, it just shows how they're not the government over their people. These people are hostage to their own government. And that's a very clear point that we've seen over 47 years. So another point I actually want to make is in the media, we're seeing a lot. I've been on various not so friendly media interviews where they start to say we don't have any proof of the death toll, and the pivot there is that the death toll doesn't need to come from the last 2 weeks. The death toll needs to come from the last 47 years, where they've also been the #1 executioner in the world. Just in the month of October, over 300 Iranians were executed. And what are their crimes? Posting on Facebook, posting on Instagram, being an athlete, being a poet, being a writer, being a political opposition member, somebody who voices their opinion. So that's where we're at.
Thank you so much, Lisa. We'll do one more question, perhaps a third. The second question is for Sam. Sam, can you speak a little bit more about the exiled Reza Pahlavi, kind of what his role has been from abroad and the role he's playing from abroad at the moment?
That's also a very good question, because right now what the people of Iran need more than anything else is unity. Iran is a country with a 2,500-year tradition of monarchy, of kingdom. And the king has always symbolized the unity of the nation. Iran is a nation of many different ethnicities, different regions, even different languages, different music, different food. And what holds this country together is a central figure, a central government that they can all trust. At this point, this figure is personified in Reza Pahlavi. He is the man they trust to lead the nation to freedom. They furthermore trust him even more because of the fact that he's declared time and time again that he is not there to seek power, that he will lead the movement up to the ballot box, and he will then submit himself to whatever the nation decides.
Great. Thank you so much, Sam. Thank you for that insight. And again, thank you to all those who've submitted questions. I'm going to end just with one more question, and that's really for everybody, all our speakers. The question is, do you have hope in this moment? Whoever would like to share a little bit of your thoughts on that, please do. Anyone?
I mean, I'll go, Tanas. This is Arzu. Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree that there's hope, and I think that I think we're at a critical moment with what we're seeing, and I definitely, you know, as a longtime activist and as a child that stood at the federal building in Los Angeles, you know, in the 80s, I definitely have hope. I do see the fall of this regime, and it's definitely coming. And I think with the Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi leading, you know, this movement that they're calling him, you know, his name in Iran, I think this is the key. And yeah, I definitely have hope. I do. I wish for that day that I could set foot on that soil, and that is my hope.
Thank you, Arzu. Anyone else? Do you have hope or anything that you'd like to share about hope as things unfold?
I'll name that hope is what's kept this movement alive over the years, and hope is what the Iranian people within Iran have been holding on to for 47 years, and we're seeing that hope erupt onto the streets of Iran right now. So yes, I have hope. I think we all have hope. If we didn't have hope, I don't think any of us would be doing what we do. The time is now, and I think that it's important to turn that hope into action, and that action for us here is to amplify the voices of Iranians, is to amplify the messaging of Reza Pahlavi, and to amplify the plight of the people of Iran to our elected officials, which I'm sure also, I mentioned Action for Iran. I also think Arzu would be able to help very much with that. And if I may go as far as saying, I hope you don't mind, Arzu, please find out how to reach out to her to find out how, excuse me, how that can be done so that we can transfer that hope into action.
Thank you so much. I think we can leave it. Rabbi Tarlin, did you want to?
I just wanted to just make a quick note that the difference between hope and optimism is that hope requires action, and that it has just been so amazing to see people marching all over the world. So many Iranians who haven't been home for so long and just want to go home, and they're even calling for the past monarch to come back because it was a better life. And so I think hope means talking about it at staff meetings, talking about it, asking about it, posting about it, and not just believing in facts, but believing in miracles, because they do happen. Believe it or not, they do happen. And I've seen it with my own eyes. And so it feels different this time, but we need all hands on deck. It's not just optimism, hope means action.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Tarlin. I think those were such beautiful words to conclude on. I think, again, as an Iranian woman in this community, and for so many of us who are seeing things unfold, having this webinar, having a safe space to really speak about this is so powerful. And so I am so incredibly grateful for this conversation, for our panelists, for the Federation. And I again want to thank our speakers, our facilitator, and everyone who joined us today. Thank you, thank you. We appreciate your engagement and your support for the Iranian people during this unprecedented and challenging moment. We will share resources with everyone. We will share the contact information for our speakers in case you need to contact them. And we really wish everyone a meaningful rest of the day and a peaceful 2026. Thank you again for joining us.